Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of Leadership with Emotional and Human Intelligence. Today, I am going to talk about what is emotional intelligence and why do we need that to create a meaningful, impactful leadership that would create results and would create traction. So let's get to it. Human intelligence, which I also like to call it emotional intelligence, it's so crucial to create a psychologically safe culture. It is my sincere belief that it's only in a safe culture that we can create a culture of belonging and we can be the best of ourselves and be more impactful and not only survive but also thrive. So, what is emotional intelligence? How do you score yourself, scale of 1 to 10, in your emotional intelligence? Let's reflect. Take a piece of paper and score yourself. Let's see how much awareness you have about the emotional intelligence that you carry. I get a lot of argument that people they may not have enough emotional intelligence, which is not true. We all have it. And today, my friends, we are at an inflection point. We are an inflection point that if we don't adopt it, we will have a catastrophic decline. And if we do, we will have an exponential growth. And today, that inflection point is evolution and innovation. Innovating the leadership style that we have by deploying the emotional and human intelligence and evolving as leaders to be the leaders of tomorrow, the leaders that would lead and they create not only results for today, but meaningful value for tomorrow. I am Bahar Siddharati. I'm a physician executive. I have a deep personal interest in organizational psychology. I'm also certified in psychological safety. What's the difference between emotional intelligence and our IQ, which is intellectual quotient? So we have intellectual quotient and we have our emotional quotient. Like I said, people come and say, I don't have enough emotional intelligence. I don't even have any emotional intelligence. And I argue that we all have it. In fact, the IQ or our intellectual quotient, it's very rigid. In its growth is pretty limited. The IQ that we are born, it's going to be the IQ that we live this world. Once your brain is fully developed, the amount of the IQ that you have is going to be exactly the same if we don't get any dementia or brain injury at the time of our leaving this world. It's not changing. So you see, it's just one circle and then it gets bigger and then stops. It's a rigid scale. However, our emotional intelligence, which we all have it, and how we have it and how much we have it, it just goes back to our upbringing, how we were raised, our childhood experiences. But it's not limited. It's not rigid. It can grow. So you will see circles after circles, and it can be exponential. It can even have a ripple effect and be contagious and teach others how to deploy their emotional intelligence. So it can actually expand depending how much you work on it. And that is what we call neuroplasticity, which is a real scientific phenomenon. Emotional intelligence is the art and skill of reflection before reaction. When the signal comes, you reflect, you regulate the response, and then you react. So instead of the signal coming and we react, it needs to go and get reflected, regulated, and then the person with a high emotional intelligence will react on it. And that is when we are processing our responses, not in our emotional brain, but in our prefrontal cortex or in our intellectual brain. So we have two brains. One is our primal emotional brain, and the center of this emotional brain is our amygdala. We have two amygdalas in our limbic system. They regulate our emotions. They are designed for survival. So they help us to survive, flight, fight, and freeze. That is your default operating system. But as human beings, we have a more developed brain, which is our prefrontal cortex, and that is our intellectual brain. This is a brain that separates us from the other beings. This is where we can process the signal and then regulate the response. And as we are bypassing our emotional brain and we're sending the signal and process that in our prefrontal cortex, we are basically detouring our amygdala. We are detouring our limbic system. And we process it here. And we do this frequently and more often, you actually create new neural pathways, and that is the neuroplasticity. So instead of being hijacked by your amygdala, you detour the amygdala and you are regulating and responding with your intellectual brain. And you do that on and on, you will have a new neural pathway that then automatically, before even you think about it, it's going to get processed in your intellectual brain and then you respond. But that takes time. To develop that new neural pathway and that detour, we need to practice a lot of mindfulness. And I don't mean mindfulness just by meditation, mindfulness in terms of being present, feeling where we are, being aware. That awareness and sitting with that awareness is the mindfulness that I'm talking about. So, do you want to have a default operating system, or do you want to upgrade your operating system from your just primal emotional brain to your intellectual brain? So, Daniel Goleman, about 25 years ago, brought the idea and popularized the emotional intelligence idea. In his book, he is dividing the emotional intelligence to two main domains: the self mastery and the social mastery. The self mastery is about what we feel and how we act in our own self, and the social mastery is how we perceive and how we react based on what we have in our surroundings. Next time, we're going to explore the domains of emotional intelligence. What is social mastery and what is the personal or self mastery? Thank you for your time. I will see you in the next video.